Your biggest enemies are something which are white in color. That is sugar, that is salt. There are thousands and lakhs of people who play the sport. But not everybody goes on to play for IPL at the age of 14.
Correct.
That is something which the parents have to realize. And apart from that, the sooner you get success, the sooner you fall. The action of the bowler will not be for more than 5 seconds.
Correct.
The action of a batter will not be more than a second. Power training or weightlifting is causing a lot of injuries. As you age, you keep losing muscle. It is a known fact that after the age of 50, every year you will be losing 10% of your body muscle. In order to be aesthetically pleasing, you do a lot of things which are not good for the body.
We still see advent of people posting up on social media with fake certifications, which probably they might have never done in their life.
The biggest drawback in the fitness industry is that the entry barrier for a fitness trainer is very simple. There's no entry barrier only if you ask me. Anybody can wake up today and claim themselves to be a trainer. For me, a strength and conditioning coach is equivalent to a physiotherapist or is equivalent to a medicinal doctor.
Welcome back to another episode of Everyday Light, where we bridge the gap between sport performance and human performance. Joining me today is someone who I've had the privilege of not just working alongside, but also learning a lot from. He's someone who's not just worked at the grassroots levels, but also at the elite level systems, working both at the Dubai's ILT20 and also in the Indian Premier League. Passionate strength and conditioning coach who has a master's in performance science and also a certified strength and conditioning specialist from the National Strength and Conditioning Association. Today, on our episode, we have Sai Pranay Alakanti. Nice to have you here on the show, Pranay.
Hello, Vamshi. It's my pleasure to be here.
Why do you think people should listen to this podcast before we start?
Any person who's aspiring to be fit, any person who wants to move better, any person who wants to take charge of their life is a potential listener for this podcast, because we will be discussing about a lot of stuff which will include technology, which will include nutrition, and which will also include the role of a strength and conditioning in the development of the fitness industry and culture in the country.
So cool. We'll just first start off with a warm-up round where I ask you underrated and overrated question. So you just tell me if the concept is underrated or overrated, and then probably give me the answer in a sentence or two.
All right?
Let's get going. Super. Ice baths.
Overrated. Because recovery is not just about ice bath. It is one of the aspects of recovery. It is definitely important, but not. It is definitely overrated.
Sleep and HRV tracking.
Sleep is very important. HRV, it's again, I have a neutral perspective on it. It is something which is very important. Athletes should know what their HRV is when they wake up, but definitely not the most important aspect of recovery again.
Super. Functional fitness for all age groups.
Is very important. I wouldn't say it's overrated or something. Again, I have a neutral perspective on that. Functional fitness is very important for all the age groups, because fitness training is not just about working on one aspect, but working on all the movement patterns of the body. So definitely it is important, yes.
Right. Warm-up routines.
Very important again. It's not overrated or it is not even underrated. It is something which is very crucial and an essential aspect of performance coaching.
Super. Final one. Long runs for cricketers.
I think that is an overrated thing, because end of the day, your training has to be relevant to the sport. It is good. It is good to develop your cardiovascular endurance, yes, but definitely an overrated aspect when it comes to cricket in specific. But when in general, long run is very good, yes.
Super. So now let's get into your sort of journey, how it started for you, and the transition from you training at the grassroots levels and then getting into the light setups.
So I've played professional cricket for a very long period in my life. I've started playing cricket since I was 9 years old, and then I had the privilege to play for Hyderabad Cricket Association. I've played for all the age groups, starting from 14 till under 23. Couldn't get into the Ranji Trophy team, but again, there are a lot of factors for that. But I'm more than happy with whatever career I've had in cricket. From there, I've transitioned myself into strength and conditioning coach, because fitness was something I've always been very fascinated with. Even at the penultimate stage of my career, I was into fitness. I used to train my friends and all of that.
Yeah.
And then I did my education. I made sure that I got into the field after educating myself completely. And then I got into this. And again, having the relevance of sport made me realize the importance of high performance coaching. So it was very easy for me to bridge the gap between science and the reality of the sport. So that is how I got myself into the fitness industry. Yes.
Super, super. So a lot of people still don't understand what exactly SNC is and what do human performance or sport performance is. If you could just put briefly into what and exactly does an SNC do?
So SNC, the full form of SNC, which is very, the basic stuff, strength and conditioning. SNC is not just about lifting weights. It is not just about hitting gym. It is, if you ask me, it is like performance engineering.
Right.
It is a very important aspect. SNC will help you enhance your game in the best way possible. So strength and conditioning culminates all the aspects of not only strength training, but also recovery, injury management, and also performance enhancement. So the culmination of all these variables is SNC.
Let's assume a layman is watching this podcast or listening to this podcast. How would you put SNC, let's say strength and conditioning, or sport performance or human performance? How do you explain those terms to him?
So a strength and conditioning coach is a god. No, I'm just kidding. So certainly not. Strength and conditioning is not just about building bodies. It is not just about bulking up your muscles, but the overall aspect of strength and conditioning is to improve your movement efficiency. It is about working with your energy systems and also in the same way focusing a lot on your recovery strategies so that whatever you do, you stay injury free. So when it comes to strength and conditioning, I always believe in 3 T's: testing, training, and tracking. So when it comes to normal gym training or anything, again, nothing against them, but they don't have the luxury to do all of this. They might not have the technical competency to do all of this, but an SNC, it is a part of our curriculum. So we learn how to do proper testing based on what you want, based on your needs, based on which sport you're playing, and if in case you come from a general population, based on what your goals are. Again, ultimately, the goal is to move freely. The goal is to be pain free. The goal is to touch your genetic potential. That is my job. I'll get it done. But the way I get it done is I make sure that I test you with all the testing parameters I know. I make sure that I train you with my best potential and with my best knowledge. And in the same process, I'll always keep tracking your variables so that I know if you're going in the right direction, so that I know if your performance is increasing or dipping. Based on that, I'll tweak the program and again go forward from there.
So you work not just with the grassroots level academy, but also with the elite team players. How does that shape your coaching philosophy?
So when it comes to, so basically, I have a very simple coaching philosophy. Of course, no single SNC or no performance coach should be having one philosophy. But if you ask me to narrow it down, I think it is always context over content. So you need to know why you're training, whom you're training, what you're training for.
Correct.
Once you've narrowed down these aspects into these 3 things, I'm sure SNC will become very easy. So what is right for you might be wrong for me. What is right for me might be wrong for you. So that is the reason the context of the sport and the context of the athlete is very important.
Super.
So that is my primary philosophy. You need to understand what you're getting yourself into. Once that is done, once you've established your baseline, working from there is very easy.
Nice. Okay. So there are, instances where athlete walks into you with a predetermined mindset, either be it in terms of his, training with another coach or, his training philosophy in terms of he does not want to load himself with a lot of strength training or conditioning. So how do you deal with athletes when they come with a predetermined mindset?
So that I think is one of the, how do I put it? Every SNC I know will be facing the same kind of a difficulty because when you're working with grassroots cricketers at a grassroots academy, it is fine because most of the people over there have just started their SNC journey. But when you're working with elite athletes, they already come with a fixed mindset.
Correct.
So that is when a coach has to be very smart, not just to write off their beliefs, not just to write off their values. You need to respect what they're coming from, but also you should educate them in the best way possible because end of the day, what do you want? You want the best for the athlete.
Correct.
If you think the mindset he has is already helping him, fair enough. You should only nurture it in the right way. But if you know for a fact that something he's doing is not working for him, then you and the athlete should sit there, have a proper conversation about it, have a rational understanding about what the problem is, and then get to the problem solving aspect of the situation. So I would say this is the most difficult aspect of any coach. Teaching is easy, undoing what they learned is tough.
Correct.
But if you can do that, you've cracked the training philosophy.
Super. Could you share an experience where you had a bad experience with any of the athletes that you have trained in your journey so far?
Fortunately, I've never had any kind of a bad experience with any athlete I've trained so far. Yes, there were a few had athletes who were tough to train, but certainly no bad experiences as such.
Right. Probably an SNC in Australia or UK has a little bit easy. When I say easy, because he's dealing with the cultures probably across the country in a similar way. But when in India, probably a guy coming in from north has a different set of cultures and mindset coming into you when compared to a guy coming in from south. How do you deal with this sort of cultural differences, especially with the Indian players?
I completely get that question. So, end of the day, as an SNC, again, your idea or your job is not to change what they have.
Correct.
It is about nurturing what they already have in their lives.
Correct.
So, if a North Indian comes with a certain kind of training background, with a certain kind of nutritional guidance, I think you should let them do what they are doing, because a drastic change will definitely deplete his performance. It will not improve his performance. India is a country with diverse cultures. You're supposed to accept every culture of the country, and then you're supposed to establish a certain baseline. You're supposed to establish certain principles, because end of the day, the coaching principles and the SNC principles will always be the same.
Correct.
Irrespective of what culture they come from. If you have the technical competency to have a direct carryover from your principle to their culture, nothing like it. So your idea should never be to change their culture.
No.
Rather, it is about enhancing what they already have.
Right. No, super. So let's just talk about athletic development in general now. So what do you see is the biggest difference when you talk about athletes training at the grassroots level, or it's just semi-professional when compared to an elite level athlete?
So honestly speaking, with the level of awareness people have these days, with the advent of social media and everything, people actually come from a good background.
Correct.
Irrespective of how amateur an athlete is, he knows what he is dealing with. So let's say 3 or 5 years ago, there was no social media, so people didn't know what they're putting themselves up with. Right now, even an amateur player knows what is bringing himself up. But the majority and the biggest difference between, let's say, elite athlete and a grassroots athlete is that elite athletes know what they're doing. They know about themselves, because they've been doing it for the past, 10 years, 15 years.
Correct.
If you're talking about international cricketer who's been playing for the country for the past 10 years, he knows what's working for him.
Correct.
But when it comes to the grassroots athletes, it is the job of the SNC to teach them what are the fundamentals of the SNC, what is important in their life. You should teach them the protocols of recovery. You should teach them the protocols of nutrition and all of that. So the biggest difference is that there will be a lot of teaching which will be done at the grassroots, but at the elite setup, it is not about teaching. It is just about guiding them.
Correct.
So that is the biggest fundamental difference.
Super, man. So do you think, like you said, teaching them at the grassroots level actually helps them for the grassroots level academy or the athletes training in there? Could we introduce the SNC aspect a little early into their training age, so that probably we could bridge the gap between the semi-professional and the elite level athletes?
Vamshi, I think that is a very good question. I think there has to be an early introduction of SNC to any kid.
Correct.
Of course, there's initially their approach should be multidisciplinary. They shouldn't be unidimensional in their approach. They should be playing every sport that there is. But when it comes to strength and conditioning, the sooner the better. Because if in case the athletes or the kids, if they are introduced to good SNC protocols right from the early age, then their movement patterns will be very efficient.
Correct.
They'll never be prone to injury. Their loading capability will be better.
Correct.
And once they get to know about their body, sky is the limit. And most importantly, everybody must have heard about this. There is this program called Long-Term Athletic Development Program. It has different phases, around 6 to 7 phases. So it starts right from the initial introduction of movement patterns to competing to win. So you take the kid right from the age of 5 or 6, and then you progress them to the age of 17 and 18. You make them match ready, or you make them competition ready. That is the idea. So the sooner the better.
So what do you think about the aspect of sport specialization at a very young age? Parents want their kids to be specialized in a sport or specific positions at a pretty young age. Let's see nowadays athletes coming into the sport probably at 10-year or 11-year-old, and they want to get specialized in that sport at a pretty young age. So what do you think is the issue with that sort of attitude, for both from the parents as well as the athlete?
So from the parents' perspective, they're definitely not wrong, because when you see a 14-year-old kid coming to the IPL facility, IPL setup and smashing the ball around, they'll feel that even their kids are ready to get there.
Yeah.
So it is definitely not wrong from the parents' perspective, but with a little more awareness, they will know for a fact that that is one such anomaly. There are thousands of people who play the sport. I'm specifically talking about cricket because I'm more associated with that sport.
Correct. Yeah.
There are thousands and lakhs of people who play the sport, but not everybody goes on to play for IPL at the age of 14.
Correct.
That is something which the parents have to realize. And apart from that, at least from the scientific perspective, early specialization is always dangerous to the kids because they, especially the girls and the boys, more or less the average peak height velocity for them will be from 11 to 15.
Correct.
For both the age groups. So during that period, there will be a very sudden growth spurt wherein they'll grow height very fast, more than their normal growth. That is the time when they are very prone to injuries. At that point of time, if in case you're doing early specialization, that unidimensional approach will overload the movement patterns and eventually lead to an injury.
Correct.
So if you ask me from a sports science perspective, sorry, I would say early specialization is not very good. That is a dicey syllabus.
Okay.
But if there's a multidisciplinary approach to that, definitely that should be followed.
So what would you suggest to a, probably an young athlete or a parent watching this podcast then?
I know, again, with social media advent, as I already mentioned, people want to achieve early success, but early success is always dangerous. The sooner you get success, the sooner you fall. So your path towards success should always be constructive.
Right.
It should never be in a rush.
Right.
So for all the parents of the kids who are watching this podcast, I would only tell that, yes, definitely aim to become Tendulkar, definitely aim to become Virat Kohli. You should idealize, you should have your idols, you should work towards them. But there is a certain approach which has to be followed. You shouldn't rush into things.
Correct.
Work for excellence, but don't have an early specialization. That is what I would like to tell to any athlete or any parent who's watching this podcast.
Super. That's a great answer, Pranay. So you've seen both overseas athletes as well as, obviously, Indian athletes. What do you think stood out most about the foreign athletes that were training, probably with whatever time that you've spent with them?
So honestly speaking, let's say at least 10 years down the line.
To cut you out. So I was just asking in general about their approach towards training and recovery.
Right. Again, honestly speaking, 10 years ago, let's say there was a huge gap between SNC and the sporting culture in India, but it is actually catching up a lot. So when it comes to training, of course, foreigners are more polished. They know what to do. When they come to the ground, they know how much they are supposed to run.
Correct.
They already have a certain plan. Even the Indians have that. I'm only specifically talking about foreigners because this is what I've picked up over the past couple of years with my experience with these elite setups. So the foreigners, they know what to do. And of course, the countries where they live, there is better infrastructure, there's better overall environmental conditions,
Right.
wherein they have a very high base. So their foundation itself is on a higher level. But Indians are catching up. When it comes to strength training or recovery protocols or nutritional guidelines, more or less, they're on par with each other. Foreigners are more polished, as I already mentioned.
Okay. One story or one instance which for you as an SNC stood out when you were looking at a foreign athlete when compared to India.
Right. So there's this player, I keep telling this story to all the kids
Right.
whomever I train because I work with grassroots level athletes also even now. I love doing that. Shaping somebody's future right from the start. That's my goal. That has always been my goal. So the story which I would like to tell you is that there's this player, international cricketer. It was scorching hot in Vizag. We went there for our first IPL match, and then everybody was already perspirating a lot. They were having cramps, but then this player comes to me and is like, he wants to run before his skill work. His skill was already determined by the physio. He was supposed to do certain number of hours. I'm not going to talk about his skill also because it is very easy for you to decode the name of the player once I say that.
Right.
But despite of that, he came near me. He said he wanted to run. He did a very, very, very big level of conditioning before his skill work. And then he went and did his skill work. He was absolutely fine. So that told me about him. It spoke volume about his character because he knows what he's doing.
Right.
He's an old athlete. He's a seasoned athlete, but he knows what he's doing. So the awareness towards the sport and fitness is something which actually intrigued me. That is something which every player or every athlete should have because once you are aware about your limitations and your capability, it is very easy to train.
Right. Super. So let's get a little technical here. So how do you think training for cricket as in terms of SNC perspective is different from other sports?
So again, I keep making this point because end of the day, people complicate it, but SNC is very simple. There are certain principles, there are certain foundations, there are certain biomechanical aspects which you're supposed to follow. More or less, the training is going to be similar for all the sports. Yes, if it is an aerobic sport, the training will be different. If it is an anaerobic sport, the training will be different. If it is a power-based sport, the training will be different. Once you've categorized the players or the sports and the athletes into their respective categories, it is very easy to train. So specifically when you're talking about cricket, what is cricket? Again, there is a lot of debate. No matter what I tell, people will tell it is wrong and all. It is context based.
Right.
I genuinely think that cricket is an anaerobic sport
Okay.
because the action of the bowler will not be for more than 5 seconds.
Correct.
The action of a batter will not be more than a second. The reaction time is what? Split second, if you ask me. So you are supposed to generate the maximum amount of power in the minimum amount of time.
Correct.
That itself is power for me.
Correct.
And even when it comes to running on the field, you hardly see an athlete running 50 meters or 40 meters.
Correct.
At the most, any athlete or any fielder on the ground will run for 30 meters.
Correct.
So I genuinely categorize cricket into an anaerobic sport.
Okay.
So my training also is more or less relevant to that particular thing only. Of course, off season, in season, pre-season, again, there will be differentiation between these seasons. But I train cricketers as an anaerobic sport, and my training philosophy also is like that only. It is very relevant to the sport.
What is one physical quality that you think should deserve a little more focus than what it is currently getting?
So there's this huge debate which is going on social media that power training or weightlifting is causing a lot of injuries to all the cricketers because there are a number of players who are going to the National Cricket Academy after an injury. And more often than not, if you look at the media reports and all, you see that they've been introduced to weightlifting. That is the reason they're getting injury. There is a lot of axial loading which is happening, which is giving rise to these kind of injuries. But if you ask me, again, it is very important. If you can master the training of power training, if you can master the art of weightlifting, it is something which is very important. It will have a direct relevance and carry over to the sport.
Yeah.
So power training and working that biomotor aspect, that is strength, speed and speed strength. If in case, again, plyometrics also come under that same graph of things, under the same scheme of things. If in case you can master that, I think you'll do wonders in cricket.
Super.
So power training is something which I would say is one aspect which people are supposed to work upon.
Right.
Yes, you should know the volume, you should know the load, you should know when to take a pause. But if done right, it will do wonders to your sport.
Yeah, but like you were saying, there is so much of attention that has been given to power training on social media. But there have been instances where people think they are getting a lot more injured when they are training for power, especially people who are trying to emulate Virat Kohli's cleans and stuff and getting some sort of wrist injury. What would you think about that?
So again, I've not personally seen Virat Kohli's program or anything, but I know for a fact that the videos which he posts on Instagram, he does it once in a week, if I'm not wrong. And the amount of weight he's lifting also is minimal to his level of competency. But what people do is, they try and emulate the same thing every single day. They try and emulate the same thing every alternate day. That is where the problem is coming. The problem is not with power training. The problem is not with weightlifting. The problem is with the overall volume.
Correct.
The amount of lifting which is being done is a lot.
Okay.
That is where you're supposed to take a step back, think, talk to your strength and conditioning coach. Weightlifting is never bad. And when you talk about power training, it is not just about these Olympic lifts. It's not just clean jerk and snatch. You can do power training in a number of ways. You can do a dumbbell split jerk. You can do a push press. You can do a bench press with an intent of power to have the same amount of, or to have the same kind of relevance to your lifts. So if you're doing a bench press with an explosive intent, that will more or less activate the fast twitch muscle fibers.
Correct.
Why do you do a power lift? In order to activate that pool of fast twitch muscle fibers.
Right.
So if you are able to get that same thing with a different exercise, which is relatively safe, why would you not do that?
Correct.
So it is not about being fancy. It is about doing the simple things in the best way possible.
Correct.
That will give you the result end of the day.
Super, super. That's a great answer, Pranay. So now just moving away a little from sport performance, I would want to know about your training in terms of human performance as well, because I know that you've trained quite a lot of celebrities. Don't want to take their names out. So what was the experience like? And probably how do you approach training for those sort of people whose job actually demands performance, but not necessarily sport in general?
So I'll tell you one very simple thing. Everybody in the world is an athlete. That is my perspective. So irrespective of what lifestyle they have, irrespective of what walk of life they come from, I treat them as an athlete.
Right.
So even these so-called celebrities whom we're talking about, their life is nothing short of an athlete.
Got it.
They grind from morning till evening. So my kind of approach towards their training also is as simple as what I follow with my athletes. It is about refining their functional patterns. It is about working on their overall movement proficiency. It is about curating protocols wherein I make sure that they are injury free. It is about taking care of their recovery protocols. Again, overall, it is about taking care of overall nutritional guidance also.
Correct. But don't you think people are still separating a lot between human performance and sport performance nowadays?
See, again, I think it's a myth. People should start understanding that sports performance, human performance is actually a branch of sports performance.
Correct.
It is not the other way around. So, when you're talking about sports performance, it is not just running, jumping, and all moving around. It is about enhancing and facilitating your training in such a way that your daily skill and your daily life will become very easy. So, that is sports performance according to me. People think sports performance is running, jumping, throwing the ball around,
Correct.
playing a sport or something like that. In fact, everybody should train like an athlete. Everybody should dream to be an athlete. To your potential, of course, you can't expect a 60-year-old to run in a marathon who just started training 3 years ago.
Right.
But he should have a goal of running towards marathon, which will ultimately help him.
Correct.
So, athletic or sports performance is about pushing yourself. It's about pushing your limits in the safe way again.
Right.
That is the biggest word, safe way. Who will determine the safe level? The SNC or the performance coach whom you're working with. So, most of the, I would say, any person who is approaching a strength and conditioning coach or a personal trainer or a fitness professional, most of the homework should be done before you go there. Once you go there, just surrender yourself because you enrolled in the program. Trust in them.
Correct.
Give yourself 3 or 6 months because any kind of performance enhancement will not happen overnight. You're supposed to give your body some time.
Correct.
Initially, your body will be in a state of shock. It will take 1 month for the body to understand what is happening.
Correct.
Post that, the improvements will start happening. Little patience and then everybody will get where they want to be.
Super. So adaptation, like you're talking about.
Exactly.
So, do you think people should start chasing performance goals over aesthetics goals?
I think yes, they should only focus on performance goals because it is about movement quality. It is about enhancing your spatial awareness. It is about enhancing your coordination, agility. Because as you age, you keep losing muscle. It is a known fact that after the age of 50, every year you'll be losing 10% of your body muscle. Your bones tend to become more porous. You will start developing osteoporosis, and especially the women population they have this.
Right.
So rather than just focusing on aesthetic goals, because in order to be aesthetically pleasing, you do a lot of things which are not good for the body.
Right.
You go on an extreme diet wherein you hardly eat any food. You push yourself to the limits of your brim wherein you tend to be injured.
Right.
So rather than that, if in case you are chasing performance goals with a progressive overload on the body, it is good both in terms of, obviously you'll not have a six-pack maybe to begin with, but ultimately you'll have a very fit body, your lifestyle will be very good, and everything else will be sorted.
Do you think it's time for the general fitness trainers to start incorporating movement quality and recovery into training?
Honestly speaking, I think they already started.
Sorry, I was talking about prioritizing those movement quality proficiencies more than bodybuilding aesthetics.
So unless you have some kind of a professional goal wherein you're supposed to show a six-pack on the screen,
Correct.
wherein you're supposed to be having a swimsuit figure, see, this is their professional field. You can't judge them. If they want that kind of a body, fair enough. But that kind of a body is not long-lasting.
Right.
Even those people who are working with them and the people who are getting worked upon, they know that. That is only for a very short period of time. It will only last for 2 months or 3 months. And after 3 months, they'll never be in that kind of a shape. Again, if they want to get there, they'll work upon that. What is long-term is doing proper training.
Right.
What is long-term is focusing on your movement patterns. I think most of the trainers are actually adapting that. Nothing to do with the industry. People are upgrading themselves. For the past 2 years, there are n number of fitness certifications that have come up. People are actually enrolling themselves. They are doing a lot of mentorships also. People are actually moving in the direction. There is no much difference now.
But now that you've touched upon fitness certifications and people starting to get, we still see advent of people boasting upon social media with fake certifications, which probably they might have never done in their life, or training people just because they trained well, for probably 2-3 years, and then start calling themselves human performance coaches or strength and conditioning coaches. What do you think that this will lead to in terms of SNC in India, especially? These are the things which are pretty not common in other countries because they have accredited organizations in other countries. in India, we don't have a statutory body that would actually gauge their certification or knowledge. So that is what I wanted to touch upon.
So the biggest drawback in the fitness industry is that the entry barrier for a fitness trainer is very simple. There's no entry barrier only, if you ask me. Anybody can wake up today and claim themselves to be a trainer.
Correct.
Which is not wrong. The idea behind becoming a trainer is definitely not wrong. You're trying to serve the society. You're trying to do something good. Your ultimate goal is to make the society fit, which is absolutely fine. But these so-called certifications, I think there has to be a governing body, which like NSCA or AAS. So these are all foreign organizations, if you ask me. One is based in Australia, one is based in the US and all. I think India also, the fitness industry or the pioneers of the fitness industry in the country have to come up with such organization wherein they start giving out these certifications to the qualified professionals.
Yeah.
That would be a better approach towards training, because ultimately what would you want? You would want the safety of your clients.
Correct.
And even the trainer who's trying to become a trainer, if in case he's educated well, it is good for him.
Correct.
Rather than being a half-cooked potato, if in case you're fully cooked, it is best for both you and your client.
Correct.
So I think building a governing body which will give out these certifications, that would be the ultimate goal, yes.
So what do you think is the basic difference between a personal trainer and an SNC? Because most of the people nowadays on social media can't differentiate between a personal trainer and a strength and conditioning coach. They think both of them are same because they see both of them in the gym.
So Vamshi, again, as I told, the entry barrier into fitness is basically minuscule these days. Anybody can become a fitness trainer. So, but when it comes to strength and conditioning, there are a lot of degrees. Not everybody can become an SNC. Again, there are few certifications for that also. Again, according to me, they're all bogus. It is very important that you do your education well. For me, a strength and conditioning coach is equivalent to a physiotherapist or is equivalent to a medicinal doctor. Because we do a 4-year degree, post that they do masters, not just in the field of SNC, but in the field of sports science, which culminates not only strength training, but also aspects of psychology, nutrition, biomechanics, and exercise physiology. So strength and conditioning is very diverse in its approach. So basically, a strength and conditioning knows his value, he knows his education. From there, it is not just about building or improving muscle, as I already mentioned before. When it comes to strength and conditioning, I think it is not just about building muscle, but it is about enhancing your coordination, enhancing your spatial awareness, improving your neuromuscular ability, and enhancing your cognitive enhancement. So all of these can be done by an SNC. Personal trainer might not have the knowledge to do these, but an SNC knows what they're dealing with. Right. So all of these aspects can easily be addressed by an SNC.
Super. But how do you think a layman could differentiate it actually between a a personal trainer and a strength and conditioning coach? Because once they step into a gym, they'll have no knowledge regarding anatomy, physiology, let's say nutrition or recovery. So how do you think they could differentiate between an SNC, a personal trainer, or a guy who just trained for his aesthetics and then called himself a coach?
If you ask me, you can never directly differentiate between a normal trainer and SNC. That is where you're supposed to do your research. Before you approach a person, know about that person, try and take out his history, or else read his resume, see what all kind of studies he has done, see if he has any kind of bachelor's that is related to sports science, and then qualify him as an SNC or qualify him as a personal trainer. Because when it comes to the training in the gym, more or less, the kind of exercise which will be performed by two will be same. So for a layman, it is very tough to differentiate between the two. Your homework has to be done before approaching the person.
Correct.
Get to know about him, get to know if he's a qualified SNC or no, and then test him on his knowledge.
Correct.
Then start training with him. Just because he has a certification or a degree doesn't mean he's good. He's very good at his job.
Correct.
It is your job and it is your responsibility to make sure what you're getting yourself into. That is how you can differentiate.
Super. That's a great answer, Pranay. Technology has grown leaps and bounds in the past, let's say 5-10 years. So do you think, are we improving our performance through technology, or are we just overcomplicating it?
So Vamshi, I would like to tell you that technology is a tool. It is not your truth.
Right.
Everybody should know this. You shouldn't be over-reliant on technology because data is very important. Yes, I'm not at all denying that. But data, if in case not used properly, will only give you confusion more than clarity. So anything that is giving you confusion then clarity, what is the purpose of using it?
Right.
End of the day, it comes down to the contextual understanding of the coach End of the day, it comes down to the feedback which is given by the athlete. End of the day, it comes down to the overall development of the athlete. Technology should be used as a tool,
Correct.
but you shouldn't be over reliant on that. And not everybody have access to technology, because
Correct.
there are a lot of technologies in the country right now are very expensive. So that is the reason, all the more you should know how to subjectively train an athlete. You should create your own protocols, like, taking RP from them, talking to them regularly, understanding their overall recoveries and protocols. Maybe they can have a variable, yes, but to have access to all kinds of technology, it's not very easy.
Correct.
So my perspective is that you shouldn't be over reliant on that. If you have it, use it, because it will give you objective data. It is no more subjective. Everything will be fine tuned.
Right.
So what technology does is, it might not define you, but it will definitely refine you.
Okay.
So that refinement is done by technology.
Super. Like you said, lot of SNC coaches won't have the access to tech right from their early careers in SNC or at the grassroots levels. What do you think is a great tool to have at the grassroots level academy? And if you could just talk about a little bit of the technology that is available, probably for the budding SNCs that are watching this podcast or listening to.
Again, comes down to the financial constraint. If in case you have the money to buy, you have the world ahead of you. You have the world of technology available for you. But if you don't have money, it is absolutely fine. I did not have any kind of money when I started my SNC, yet I did my testing. End of the day, what is important is the brain in your head.
Right.
If in case you know your testing protocols, you don't have to have a set of force plates to test the vertical jump of an athlete.
Correct.
Anybody with a piece of chalk in their hand and a wall beside them can jump high and check their vertical jump. You can do their power profiling. When it comes to isometric testing, you don't need to test their IMTP, that is their isometric mid-thigh pull, or you don't have to have the reactive strength index or dynamic strength index. As simple as a split squat hold will let you know the unilateral difference, and then you can start working upon them. If in case you have a little money, fair enough, you can buy a dynamometer. The handheld dynamometers have come down. They were very expensive initially to begin with, but the prices of the dynamometers have come down. You might probably get them for 25,000-30,000. Very important. It will let you know the difference between your limbs. So once you get to know that there is a unilateral deficit, you can start working upon that. You can curate your programs more properly.
That is one thing regarding the sport performance technology. But nowadays, the consumer wearable technology has gone into a lot of not just athletes, but also the general population. So wearables like Whoop or have been everywhere on everyone's wrist nowadays. So do you think the data from Whoop or our Ultra Women is useful, or is it just again overhyped?
So when it comes to athletes, I think it is definitely useful.
Okay.
You shouldn't be over-reliant on that, because athletes, most often than not, they tend to get scared.
Right.
They genuinely believe that they are not recovered once they see the recovery score on Whoop being 8% or 9%. But tracking your sleep is a very healthy habit, because I started wearing the wearable technology. What happens is, it will ask you for accountability.
Correct.
Once you know for a fact that you're not sleeping well, the score is in front of you. The technology is not going to lie, because you invested a lot, the company has invested a lot, it will give you accurate result.
Right.
If not 100% efficient, they are 90-95% efficient for sure. So once you know for a fact that you're only sleeping for 6 hours, you will put in extra effort to work on your sleep.
Right.
Once you know for a fact that your strain is not at the peak, you know for a fact that you can push a lot. But again, even if your recovery says it is only 14%, but if you're feeling good, I always believe the subjective feedback from the athlete.
Correct.
So if an athlete feels he's good, the recovery might be from his mental strain. Physically, he might still be feeling good. So you can still push the athlete, but again, it will give you a caution. I think if used well, technology is very important.
Moving on the lines that you said, people over obsessing themselves with a recovery score or sleep score. There is also this coined term called orthosomnia, where people are over obsessing themselves on their perfect sleep score. What do you think that you, as a SNC coach or a performance coach, would do in such a scenario where an athlete is coming up to you and saying he is just getting a 60% or 70% score, but he's still sleeping well?
So again, as I told, comes down to the subjective feedback of an athlete. You shouldn't be technology should only be used as a tool. You shouldn't be over reliant. If you are very much obsessed with the sleep score, in fact, that stress will make sure that your sleep score reduces.
Correct.
The more you stress about it, the bad your sleep keeps getting. Always make sure that you take the data from that, speak to your SNC. Most often than not, a qualified SNC will give you the tips on the recovery strategies. So your sleep score will ultimately improve not by stressing on the sleep, but working on the other aspects of your overall well-being. If you start focusing on your nutrition, if you start focusing on basic stretching, reading a book, doing proper meditation, doing breath work just before you sleep, automatically the sleep score will improve. So this knowledge athlete might not have. So as an SNC, it is my duty, or it is the duty of the person who's listening to this podcast, to have this rational conversation with the athlete that never stress about the sleep score. That is a data which is cautioning you that, okay, so and so variable is wrong. Try and lay more emphasis on that. It is not saying that you are bad. It is not saying you are worst. It is just asking to lay more emphasis on that. So what I would say is, rather than stressing on that, talk to the SNC, figure out what are the ways that can help. Let's say you might probably get if in case you have good time throughout the day, maybe clocking in an afternoon nap, that will again help you reduce the sleep debt and ultimately give you a better sleep score. And again, coming back to the previous question, people are already obsessing a lot about sleep score, and also this recovery is usually linked with HRV and RHR.
Right.
I'm sure you must have that question in your mind. I'm just bringing it up.
Right.
So
That was my next question that was coming up. Because, each and every device provides an HRV score a lot different from one another. Let's say if you have an Apple Watch, you'll get an X number. When you compare that with an Whoop, and you're getting a completely different number. So people don't understand. They still, link that to a specific constant number that they are looking at. Probably one such metric is RHR, which we should probably look at because it's consistent everywhere. Because resting heart rate, even though it is a metric that we track when we are at rest. So what do you think people should, rely more on? Metrics such as HRV, RHR, or, probably sleep score or the sleep consistency score or the efficiency. What are, probably one or two metrics that you would look in a consumer wearable?
So if you ask me, sleep consistency is something which is very definitely helpful, because more often than not, the sleep consistency will not have much difference between an Apple or a Whoop score. Because if in case you're getting it into your bed by 9:30 and if in case you're sleeping at 10, the sleep score or the sleep cycle will start from 10 o'clock. The sleep consistency is something which you're supposed to aim for. With my athlete, that is the primary thing I talk about. In order to set the circadian rhythm, the athlete should make sure to get into the bed at same time. Of course, there will be a few matches, they will be traveling and all.
Right.
Those are all anomalies. But if they are at home, if in case they are doing their off-season training, the primary metric which they are supposed to be looking at is sleep consistency.
Right.
In case they are able to get to the bed at the same time, nothing like it. That is something which you are supposed to master. So when it comes to heart rate variability, it is heavily dependent on a parasympathetic nervous system. If in case your body is rested well, if in case you are recovered well, your body is in a state of calm, that is when your HRV will increase. But if you have a sympathetic overdrive in your body, that is your body is under constant state of stress, if you're practicing a lot, if you're moving around a lot, if you're working out a lot, and if you're not focusing on your recovery, if you're not focusing on your breath work, there will be a huge sympathetic overdrive, because of which the heart rate variability will decrease. Heart rate variability is nothing but it is a variation between the heartbeats.
Right.
So the more the variation, the better it is for your body.
Right.
So for athletes, it is again not a compulsion number, but anything above 50 is good, anything above 100 is elite.
Right.
But again, even if it is 40, 45, please do not worry about it, because what matters ultimately is that if it is 45 in the morning, if it is 45 in the night, that means your body is very stable, your body is constant.
Right.
Having a heart rate variability of 180 one day and having a heart rate variability of 150 in the other day, again, there is something wrong with the body.
Right.
That is what you are supposed to stress upon.
Right.
Coming to resting heart rate, it is very simple. The more seasoned athlete you are, the more you train, your resting heart rate will gradually increase.
Right.
That is the biggest improvement any person can see. The other metric which you asked me about was resting heart rate. So in our body, we have something known as a cardiac output.
Right.
Cardiac output is nothing but it is a culmination of your heart rate and your stroke volume.
Right.
If in case your resting heart rate is reducing, that means your heart has to function less for the same amount of work which you're doing.
Right.
So let's say you're working for 60 minutes and your heart rate is touching 75 on day 1. And if you're working for 60 minutes on day 35 and your heart rate is only touching 58,
right,
your body already started functioning well.
Right.
So this is active heart rate
Right.
during your workout. Even in your sleep, if your body doesn't require a lot of heart rate, if your body is not seeking for beats per minute wherein your heart is touching 70, 72, and if in case it is somewhere around 50, 51, and it is gradually reducing from there, that means your body is actually doing well.
Right.
You are adapting to the stresses of the body, your cardiovascular system is improving.
Right.
Ultimately, that should be goal of any population.
Speaking on group again, do you think is it for everyone? Is it just for athletes or is it for everyone in terms of general population as well? Probably an IT profession that is working in the industry.
So Whoop doesn't pay me to say this, but I think Whoop is very good for athletes because in a professional setup, or if in case you're talking about a high elite match, you're not supposed to wear any kind of technology.
Correct.
You're banned from carrying any kind of technology to the dressing room or to the ground.
Correct.
That is where something like Whoop comes into play because Whoop stores all the information, and once you connect to your phone, everything will be synced to the phone.
Right.
So for an athlete, it is definitely helpful, no given. And the technology which they use also is very good.
Right.
If you ask me, it is also very helpful for other population also.
Right.
Because Whoop is not just giving you metrics such as heart rate variability and resting heart rate. It is also telling you a lot about your sleep. It is telling you a lot about your strain and also recovery.
Right.
So any population who have access to this kind of technology, they know what to do with their body. And if in case the metrics go off the chart, they can have a discussion with a professional like you or me.
Right.
You can guide them. So definitely it is very much recommended to almost every population.
Well, let's just shift gears into nutrition, one of the crucial aspects in terms of recovery. What do you think in terms of nutrition that athletes at elite level and grassroots level still make mistakes in terms of?
So one thing which I would like to tell is people are over obsessed about protein. Yes, there is a dietary recommendation which you're supposed to follow if in case you are doing proper kind of training and if in case you are at an elite athlete level. Ideally, the recommendation is you're supposed to have somewhere around 1.4 to 1.8 grams of protein per gram of your body weight.
Right.
So let's say if you're 100 kgs, you're supposed to have around 140 to 180 grams of protein.
Right.
But in the quest of getting the protein, they take too much of protein shake from the whey protein.
Right.
That is something which I personally am a not huge fan of. If you're having one scoop of day, it is absolutely fine. You're supposed to take it. It will enhance your performance. It will make sure that you recover well from your sessions. It will reduce the muscle soreness. It has multiple things which it will do in the body.
Right.
But if you are over reliant on that, eventually it will put a lot of load on your kidneys.
Right.
After a certain age, what will happen is your body or your organs will not know how to process the protein from the food which you eat.
Right.
So that is the reason an easy source of protein is helpful initially, yes, but that shouldn't be a long-term solution.
Correct.
That is one of the major aspects. And the second thing is obsession of not having a lot of carbs.
Right.
That is the biggest myth. An athlete should do carbs.
Right.
He should do carb loading if you ask me. Before match, he should do carb loading. Carbs is the fuel. Protein is something which will help you recovery.
Right.
Fat will make sure that the overall homeostasis of the body is maintained. So a mixture of everything, making sure that you get your protein, fat and carbs in a right way is something which will ultimately help in your nutrition.
Right.
At the elite level, the athletes know what they are dealing with. Most often than not, they keep working with the nutritionist. So according to their body type, they are given diet charts.
Right.
But at the grassroots level, people are still falling a little behind it. But if you ask me, in simple context, what I can tell is have one whey scoop of protein a day. That is something which will help any kind of population. Let it be an athlete, which will help in the recovery. For general population, they'll not meet their protein recommendation if you ask me.
Correct.
For general population, it is somewhere around 1 gram per kg of body weight. So for a 80 kg person, they're supposed to have 80 grams of protein.
Right.
I'm sure they'll hardly have around 20 to 30 grams.
Right.
So they're significantly falling short of protein.
Right.
So whey protein will help in both the cases. Apart from that, make sure to get your fats, have basic eggs, have nuts, try and have good oils. All of this will be very helpful both for the athletic population and for general population. And make sure that you get your carbs from good source.
Right.
Rather than being over reliant on simple sugar or simple carbs, have your carb from complex carbs. What is complex carb again? That is something which will get digested very slow in the body.
Right.
So complex carbs can be anything which has color. Your biggest enemies are something which are white in color.
Right.
That is sugar, that is salt, that is your flour, starch, and sometimes milk. Milk
Right.
is not always good. So having that in moderation is definitely good. But over relying on milk also is bad. So stay away from something which has white in color. Always stay close to something which is colorful.
Right.
So these are general recommendations for any population.
Right. Super. Pranay, in terms of few athletes having that obsession with the body composition, they look at let's say a Virat Kohli, and he's carrying a certain picture of him being fit. Do you think people are so obsessed with that image of him being fit, and they want to get in that specific shape, and in doing so, they are eating less in terms of, like you said, carbohydrates and fats, which are essential for their hormonal functioning? What sort of advice would you give to such athletes neglecting carbs and fats and, like you said, prioritizing protein over them.
So one thing which I would tell all of these athletes or any kind of general population is that make sure that you eat what is cooked at home. Most often than not, if you're doing that, 80% of your problems will be solved. Because the home cooked food is something your body has been habituated to since very long.
Right.
If you're a 25-year-old, that means you're eating home cooked food for the past 25 years.
Right.
If you start incorporating different kinds of food into your system, that is when the body starts acting up in a wrong way.
Right.
You don't have to be extremely obsessed with the calorie intake unless you have some kind of a professional goal. If in case you are in an extremely obese or an obese category, in order to put down weight, yes, you're supposed to track your calories and all of that.
Right.
But if in case that is not the case, make sure that you are having a healthy meal.
Right.
Have 3 meals or have 2 meals, whatever works for you based on the kind of work you're doing. But make sure that your plate is colorful.
Right.
Make sure that there is a portion of carb, there's a good portion of protein, there's a good portion of fat, and also there are a good portion of micronutrients and fiber, which will come from your vegetable. And make sure that your hydration also is always on point.
Right.
With all of this, if you're not hydrating yourself well, and if you're dehydrating, it is like running a machine or running a car without fuel. Water is very important because 70-75% of your body is ideally water. The
Right.
constituency is water. So water is something which will make sure that the homeostasis is maintained,
Right.
and ultimately it will give you results.
Right. Super. And like we discussed, there's so much of information available on social media now. But even after that, there are still, blunders or mistakes that have been made by athletes. What are probably, you could pick 1, 2, or 3 mistakes that athletes are making nowadays in terms of nutrition?
So if you ask me that, the primary mistake would be that being obsessed with Virat Kohli's diet, that is being a vegan. Maybe it's working for him.
Right.
I'm sure Virat Kohli must have had a great conversation with his nutritionist or with the doctors he's dealing with, and he must have come to a conclusion that vegan is working for him. And any person who's trying something new, they do a trial run first. They see if it is working for them or no. Only if it is working, they'll continue doing it.
Right.
For some reason, it is working for him. Let him do it. Based on him, a lot of non-veg eaters whom I train turn vegan and their
Right.
performance dip.
Right.
They are not getting the protein. They don't have access to the best of vegan food.
Right.
Vegan food is very expensive. So never follow the fads. If you follow the fads, it will always be very harmful for you.
Right.
If you are a non-vegetarian, be happy. Eat non-veg. Cut down on your red meat. It is again a lot of fat. There's a lot of trans fat. If you ask me, it is definitely not good. It will disrupt your digestive system. But if in case you're getting your protein from nice sources like chicken and all of that, please continue doing that.
Right.
And if you ask me few more mistakes, being again over obsessed with these hydration drinks,
Right.
power gels and all of that. Instead of that, if you ask me, you can happily have lemon water.
Right.
You can stick to a small electrolyte sachet. It has the right composition of sodium, potassium, and your magnesium and different essential salts. So happily you can stick to them. Again, the one of the biggest mistake which a lot of people do is they go get this DEXA scan done, they get this body analysis done and all of that. The moment they see that there is lesser lean mass and a lot of fat mass in their body, they tend to cut down on fat. That is again a wrong approach. In fact, fats are very essential, but make sure that you get your fats from good fats. As I mentioned, avocados, nuts, eggs, these are the things which will reduce the inflammation in the body. So never cut down on fats because fat will not only help reduce the inflammation, but it is also very good for your brain health.
Right.
In the quest and obsession of becoming very fit, people always tend to focus on their brain and their mental health.
Right.
Your brain also needs food. The best food for your brain is fat.
Right.
Even somebody who deals with schizophrenia or any kind of a brain disorder, they are always on a keto diet.
Right.
Because fat is very important. So make sure that you don't cut down your fat.
And if you're a Virat Kohli fan and if you're an athlete, don't turn vegan. That's what Pranay said. So, Vivan, in terms of recovery again, how do you rate ice bath and foam rolling?
Ice bath and foam rolling are very good. They are the components of recovery which will help you. But ultimately, the best recovery will only happen if in case you make sure that you get your sleep well and the nutrition is met.
Right.
Nutrition and the sleep are the foundation of your recovery. Ice bath, sauna, infrared, red light therapy, percussion massage, deep tissue massage. These are all attributes or components which will enhance the process of recovery.
Right.
But they are not the only sources of recovery. So ideally, I would ask you, everybody who's watching this podcast, that sleep and your nutrition are the best friends. Anything after that is a bonus.
Right. Superman. That's a great insight. Before we wind up, I have a quick, let's say, edit over questions for you. What's your future take on strength and conditioning in India, especially?
The industry is booming very well. There are a lot of organizations which are coming up with good certifications. Universities have started teaching bachelors in sports science, strength and conditioning, which was not present, 5 or 10 years ago. One thing which the pandemic has done is that it has opened up an array of things for a lot of people. Yes, there has been a lot of mishap. There have been a lot of bad things which have happened at that point of time. But again, world and human population is such that every time something happens, it will evolve into something better. Now, the biggest thing that has happened after that is that there is a huge shift towards the fitness.
Right.
So, fitness industry is definitely booming, and there will be a lot of qualified SNCs. There will be a lot of qualified performance coaches. The promise, the future in India looks very promising.
Right, Superman. Do you think cricket paved a path for SNCs to come into the industry? And what do you think? How did the SNC culture in cricket started off paving culture for other sports as well?
No,
In
I
terms
think,
of SNC, yeah.
no, I think it is absolutely a very good point because 5 or 10 years ago, people hardly knew the concept of performance coach or an SNC.
Right.
A lot of people have been going to a lot of trainers, and for some reason India has not been doing great in Olympics and all of that. If you see, it's not just about cricket, but over the past 5 years India has been catching up. There are a lot of SNCs who are coming into the industry, and I think cricket has a major impact on that.
Yeah.
There is a lot of fame, there is a lot of money, there is a lot of culture, there is a huge foundation in cricket. So people are seeing their idols like Virat Kohli, now Shubman Gill, or someone like Rishabh Pant and all, who are very fit. Looking at them, they know for a fact that SNC is doing some kind of work which is actually improving their game.
Right.
The same thing is being carried over into other sports also. So SNC, the culture has developed in the country, but a majority of the appreciation for that has to be given to BCI and Indian cricket team for that.
Super. Final question before we leave. Do you think we still have that obsession of foreigners being an SNC over Indian coach?
Yes, if you ask me, there's still some kind of obsession and leaning towards these Westerners. I don't know why, because there is a lot of talent, there is a lot of knowledge with the SNCs over here. There are a lot of educated people, if you ask me, who've done their masters, who've done their diplomas, who've done their bachelors from these Western countries. There shouldn't be any kind of obsession to that kind of a population. Rather, try and deep dive into the systems of India, where you'll find brilliant coaches who are much more dedicated, who make sure that they want to give their best to any athlete they're training with. And if you ask me, I think we are not only on par with them, we've crossed them when it comes to strength and conditioning. Because if you see in the Western culture, somebody who goes with an injury to a rehab setting, they'll only get 1 class a week. Rehab doesn't work that way.
Right.
They'll only get 2 classes a week for elite training. After that, everything is monitored by program. Training doesn't work that way. But in India, the SNC culture is such that, or the physiotherapy culture is such that we spend a lot of time with the clients.
Right.
So right now, with the inculcation of all the sports science principles, with the inculcation of technology, we are much ahead. I
Right.
think it is time that these huge elite organizations, they should start looking into the Indian industry rather than focusing more on the Westerners.
Superman. That's a great answer, Pranay. Thank you so much, Pranay. That's an absolute masterclass. Thank you for coming here, sharing your input and time. And I think this is going to help a lot of coaches and as well as the athletes who are into, performance and strength and conditioning. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
So that's it from today's episode of Everyday Light. If you like the episode, please share it with a coach, a teammate, or any friends of yours. Until next time, stay curious, stay fit, and chase that everyday excellence.